بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الكيس من دان نفسه وعمل لما بعد الموت والعاجز من أتبع نفسه هواها وتمنى على الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ثم أما بعد. Honorable and respected ulama, dear brothers and elders, honorable mothers and sisters. If we want to have a look at the future generation in UK, then let's not look too much at our masajid and our madaris, but rather look at the youth. If we want to see what the next generation holds for us here at home in UK, let's not be fooled by the congregation we have now, but rather look at the young youth of the ummah which are living amongst us. What are the aspirations of these children? What are the aspirations of our youth? What are the aspirations of the young future generation who are soon to replace the adults and the elders of our community? One of the things throughout history which has always bore witness is that whenever a community had ever made fikr on their youngsters, ever made fikr on the young generation, Alhamdulillah, they always managed to stand the test of time. And throughout the ages, Alhamdulillah, these individuals persevered and they managed to gather the resources to be able to, Alhamdulillah, stay firm on deen and also tackle any fitnas and difficulties that came by way of the deen. So for that very reason, one of the most important things which we have as a responsibility on our hands is undoubtedly the tarbiyah of our children. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah is something which I've been involved with for quite some time. When I was imam of a masjid, I was imam for approximately just over 4 years. And one of the things which I was always inundated with were issues in regards to children, parents having problems with their children and so on. And I found that there's a constant, often repeated theme again and again. And it's like, subhanallah, we don't sometimes generally tend to learn from our mistakes. And what we do is that from someone like myself, I like to go and explain to people, I like to encourage, and we even inform the ummah that this is what's happening. Please don't be fooled by what we see around us. This is the biggest dokan deception. Because if you go, for example, now on what's that road called? Not Catherine Road, there's the other one. The one where you've got 5-6 masjids in one line. Romford Road, that's the one. If you go on the Romford Road, banda ye to ye samjhe mashallah, there's a lot of masajid, there must be a lot of efforts of deen and so on. We're not knocking that. But what I'm saying is that we're not knocking that. We're saying mashallah, that's a good thing. But if you look at the population of how many Muslims there are, pro rata, if you divide them per masjid, and then you evaluate your Fajr Salah, then tell me the condition of your musallis. Then tell me the condition of the youngsters. Tell me then the condition of your communities. So we're not here to point fingers because they point directly back at ourselves, but it's to do something called a bit of introspection. It's called tadabbur, to think. To kind of now think within ourselves that are we actually properly those individuals that are upholding the deen? Because there are certain websites that boast sad statistics of multitudes of people leaving the deen of Islam. In Bradford, a place in Bradford, subhanallah, they said that there's one organization that said that approximately, according to our tahqiq and investigation. Now I'm giving you an example of Bradford because generally Bradford is considered a very Muslim populated area. They say approximately on a yearly basis they have statistics of up to 8,000 people leaving Islam on a yearly basis. Now there may be a possibility of statistics going up or down. I didn't go through their tahqiq with a fine comb. It's on their head to prove the results, and just for me to kind of, to look at that and think of that for a statistic. Let's just say they got that grossly wrong and there's only half of that, 4,000. Let's just say they got that even wrong and there's only 2,000, a quarter of that. Or even a 10%, 800. By the masla is people are leaving the deen. So whether it's even if one person's leaving the deen of Allah, for us that is a big problem. That for us that is worry and concern. And generally I'm not saying this is the only reason, but a lot of the time it boils down to a lack of tarbiyah within the home. I understand that we're in a very, very sticky situation, that even if there are certain individuals that they have a very good mahal at home and they've tried to make effort on their children, but because the environment outside is still so hard, it's tough for these kids, they just fall into the wrong trap, unfortunately. And this is where the whole psychology thing comes in, is because look at the formative years of that child. What exactly went on for that kid between the ages of 0 and 11, 0 and 10? So this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look, let me say this very clearly, that whatever is in the Quran Kareem for us is haqq and hidayat. When Allah tabarak wa ta'ala mentions in the glorious Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He instructs us in the Quran, qu anfusakum, save yourselves but also your families from the fire of Jahannam. Save them from the fire of hell. Now the Quran doesn't mention anything specifically what exactly to do. Sahaba ikram radiyallahu anhum ajma'in, their tafasir and their commentary vary on this, but it all boils down to one thing. It boils down to making effort for deen. Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he mentions addibuhum wa'allimuhum. Two things: if you want to safeguard your families from the fire of Jahannam, teach them the manners of Islam, teach them good etiquettes, and also instruct them and teach them knowledge. Because even there is a possibility that if you teach somebody something, you teach someone knowledge, someone becomes grounded in the ulum of Islam, it's very possible they may lose track. But if it's stuck within their unconscious and their subconscious, it's in the back of their mind, they've got a connection, it will be their default position. Even though they may veer off to the left and right, they will come back to that path, insha'Allah. So this is why we say that we look into the aqwal of Sahaba. Look even further, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was giving tafsir of this particular verse as well. And what did he say? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Save yourselves and your families from the fire of Jahannam. And what did he say? Ali ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he mentioned i'malu bi ta'atillah wattaqu ma'asillah وَمُرُوا أَهْلِيكُمْ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ يُنْجِيكُمُ اللَّهُ مِنَ النَّارِ. He, radiyallahu anhu, he mentioned something. He said, how do you safeguard your families from the fire of Jahannam? Oh bhai, baat sune, ye koi kisse kaani nahi hai. These are not stories. I'm not here to entertain anybody. I'm here to tell you something, so it's best you pay attention, inshallah, and think of this for a moment. And for the sisters as well. Because everyone's searching for a problem, a solution to the problem. We want an answer to the issues we've got. You know, alhamdulillah, I'll tell you something, just keep this in mind. I was with one doctor up in Leicester. I was at his house. A friend of mine as well, he actually became a friend because, a long story how we met. But I basically was around his house and we was having this conversation, and I was saying there's a lot of sometimes pressure on ulama because we are expected to find solutions for every problem there is. And I was explaining that sometimes it's quite difficult because we've got all this, we carry a lot of burden at times because we hear of domestic issues, we hear the problems within the ummah, and we may not be equipped with everything to deal with everything. And then I mentioned something along these lines, and I said this comment, and I said that I don't know why is it that people always come to myself. And he said, why did you say that? And then I made that comment. It was more like a throwaway comment. I didn't realize what I was just saying, but I said, Yar, who am I? What am I, sort of thing. Obviously we study deen, and he said that is precisely the answer to your own question. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him the means of an ajib islah. Obviously I knew the answer, but it's just that where sometimes we overlook this situation. Anyway, what did he say? He said, the fact that you have studied Islam, you should have an answer to these problems. He goes, Bhai, what did we study? We studied medicine. And I'm not knocking guys who study medicine. I'm for it because we need to have that. Alhamdulillah, if you look in the time of Banu Abbas, in Baghdad alone there was 1,000 registered doctors. Muslims, subhanAllah, they always were at the forefront of education. And I don't discourage any youngsters to leave their studies and just go and be one-sided and study one thing. I don't advocate that. And some people may disagree, but I think the reason for disagreeing is more based on fear. It's that if we allow our children to go to tertiary institutions or other places where they may learn other things, there's a possibility that they may lose that sort of grip on the deen. So there's a fear factor there. But khair, we'll come back to that. But my point of mentioning is this, that alhamdulillah, Islam has encouraged academia. Islam has encouraged for you to advance in your respective field. There's nothing wrong with that. But you need to be able to hold on to your deen and at the same time excel within your dunya at the same time. But dunya should not become ghalib. Dunya should not become the main priority. Our main priority should be the deen. And even when you are studying something which is, let's just look, from the outset, let me make this very clear. I don't like this word of secular knowledge, because the word secular means separating religion from state. For us, that's a no-brainer. We would never even consider that, because everything which we do, if it is based around deen, if it is based around Islam, if it is based around iman, if it is based around Muslims and khair and goodness, then we will class that as deen. So if, for example, one youngster wants to study, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here, right? Just take example the medicine, like I gave the example of that doctor. So if he were to study with this intention, inshallah, I'm going to utilize this knowledge and I'm going to help people, and I'm going to help people fi sabilillah, then that individual, even though bazahir, it looks like he's studying something worldly. However, because his intention is to help people, inshallah, he'll get an ajr for that. Similarly as well, like for example, one brother, he was becoming an architect, and he said that I was thinking, I was going to consider to study Islam full time, and I was like, that's a good idea, mashallah, do that, but don't let go of your profession. Keep that as well. But what you do is that just make an intention, inshallah, if Allah gives me the ability, I'll use my skills in a way that I can help the ummah with this knowledge which I have. Believe me, I have a hand in time with social media, and video production and so on. By Allah, we were struggling for so long for someone just to do this graphic design work. And a lot of, people reach out to you that we can do X, Y, and Z, but then they come with such a, massive, cost, and you think, subhanallah, it's sometimes very, very difficult. I'm saying, ye bhi ek cheez hai. This is something too. Whatever skill you have, you can use it for the deen. Anyway, khair, I'm mentioning that Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he mentioned what he mentioned, and then Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he mentioned as well. But what did he say? He said radiallahu anhu, to save your family from the fire of Jahannam is how? He mentions that i'malu bi ta'atillah. Create an environment where you practice upon the hukum and the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever the do's are, you do them. You absolutely stick to them. You make sure you fulfill them. وَاتَّقُوا مَعَاصِ اللَّهِ. You abstain from those things that disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or what you and I would refer to as the don'ts. وَمُرُوا أَهْلِيكُمْ بِالذِّكْرِ. And then encourage your family, encourage your subordinates, encourage the people who are under your protection and your care to also connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dhikr here does not merely simply mean that you just give them a tasbih to hold. Okay? The likes of Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh divide dhikr into 10 particular parts. He mentions that even iman, salah, the fasting which we have, zakat, tasbih, tijara, tilawa, ihtimam of sunnah, the huquq of your neighbors, and da'wah ilallah. All of these things constitute dhikr in one way, shape or form. So encourage our children to fulfill the commands of Allah, to abstain from those things that disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Encourage them to connect to the deen of Allah by way of their salah, their fasting, in essence to practice upon the deen. What will happen automatically? يُنْجِيكُمُ اللَّهُ مِنَ النَّارِ. What will happen is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will safeguard you from the fire of Jahannam. This is the Sahabi saying this. We want to look for solutions in the problem, for the problems. There are many a time in those things, subhanAllah, which we don't even bother to even look at. And this is a big musibat in our community. Subhanallah, not that I want to, as you say, these youngsters, I don't want to get gassed. You don't understand this, innit? I don't want to get gassed, right? But the truth is that if on that particular post there it wasn't written that I had done counseling or psychotherapy, people wouldn't take us seriously. People wouldn't take us seriously because they would think that this is just general Maulvi talk or something. Now that doctor who I spoke to, alhamdulillah, he made islah of that because it also, sometimes it can affect us as well. But then he mentioned that thing, if you studied Islam, Maulana, then you need to have an answer for everything because you studied the deen. And the deen is a solution to the whole of mankind's problems. What we're doing is an element. We are doing one branch, we are doing one thing, medicine. But you are practicing deen, you should have a holistic nazar on everything. Now that doesn't mean you become a jack of all trades. It simply means that you should have some understanding, some faham of what's going on in the wider world. Anyway, khair, my point of mentioning was, we don't negate anyone's line of thinking or anyone's working or anyone's chosen fields or anyone's chosen professions. What I'm advocating is you hold on to that inshallah, but simultaneously, side by side, you also practice on your deen as well. In UK, one of the issues which we have, my dear brothers, is that we're under we have a lot of challenges. One of the challenges is that there's this rhetoric which is kind of being often played out, is that Muslims unnecessarily are enforcing deen upon their children. So for example, when it comes to fasting, a lot of people will say that, do you make your children fast? We say yes, we do. But do they have to fast? Well, not really. Not until they become baligh. So why do you make them fast? So in a lot of people's minds, it's as if we are actually enforcing something that we don't actually have to enforce. Sabke zahn ki baat nahi kar raha hu, I'm saying some people. But some people will pick up this fringe thing and say, well, hold on a second. When they don't have to do it, why are you making them do it? And it seems like a rational argument. It makes sense, doesn't it? If you don't have to, why do it? Now look, sometimes we may not have let me say it from this angle. The Prophet ﷺ instructed us on a number of different things. He instructed us that when children reach the age of 7 to start praying salah. Muru awladakum bis salah wa hum abna'u sab'a. When they reach the age of 7, then encourage them to pray salah. Tell them to pray salah from the age of 7. The question arises that we're saying possibly, mumkin hai. There's a possibility, maybe, he was definitely instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say this, because obviously we believe that the hadith is also a form of revelation. Okay? If you want to really kind of decipher, was he aware of the unconscious and the subconscious and formative years and so on? Let's not go down this whole technical route. What we are saying is the Prophet ﷺ, he said something, and for us, I'm sure there is the best example in his life. Because if Allah Ta'ala gives the certificate of approval and says, إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, he mentions that أَطِيعُ اللَّهُ وَأَطِيعُ الرَّسُولِ, follow the Prophet, follow Allah and His Rasul. And then he also mentioned that he's the greatest of character and other maqam in the Quran. We understand it from this angle that he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his life is a means of hidayat and guidance and khair, and it will be this way until the day of judgment. So he mentioned to order our children to start praying from the age of 7. What's the hikmah? What's the wisdom? We're not going to start deciphering what is the hikmah and the wisdom. The fact that he said it for us, that's sufficient. Yeah, before I carry on, I'll mention this, that there is this maraz, unfortunately, within the ummah. Like, for example, one brother, he wrote a really fantastic article about Islamic finance and so on. And because I studied it, I actually communicated. I got in touch with him and asked him, I said, mashallah, the sources you've quoted are very interesting, and I never knew that you had any knowledge on murabaha and ijara and all these concepts. I'm sorry some of these things might be alien to you, but we was having a technical conversation. So then one thing led to another, we was talking, and then blah blah, one thing, and then he was like, oh mashallah, my wife is coming, make dua. Oh, where's she coming from? She's coming from this country. Oh, okay, alhamdulillah. And then obviously I asked, about the sponsorship, how does the sponsorship work? And then he come to this one that, well, you need a house, and I was like, okay, so mashallah, where did you get your Islamic mortgage from? He goes, no, I just got a normal high street one, innit? Just a normal one. So I was like, but you advocated so well that mashallah, that you was like, the whole system is batil and taghut and batani kya kya. And then when I was reading it, I was like, subhanallah, I mean, he really rinsed the system, but then also provided an alternative. He wasn't just having a rant, but he was saying, well, this is the alternative, based a very lengthy article, and I read it and I was like, he wasn't just venting frustration, he was actually saying, these are the problems with the capitalist model and this is the alternative. And when I spoke to him, I was like, so mashallah, where did you get yours from? He goes, no, I got mine from and he mentioned a bank account, normal one. I was like, but brother, you advocating it very strongly. He goes, yeah, but bruv, you know what, yeah, until these Maulvis don't stop debating, I'm going to carry on with my normal high street mortgage. I'm like, why are you putting Maulvis down to the fault for? Why are you making them blameworthy for? Well, there's ikhtilaf. So, ikhtilaf in what? Where's the ikhtilaf? One brother, can you see where I'm going with this? That because you find, there's some ikhtilaf, okay, then I'll find gunjaish for myself. There's ikhtilaf. Where are you going to draw the line with this, that there's ikhtilaf? First of all, there's no ikhtilaf in riba at all. Let's be very, very clear. But he was saying until there's 100% unanimous, everyone is agreeing, everyone is on the same page, then I'm going to carry on how I am. Brother, there will never be 100% ittifaq in anything. You will always have a fringe opinion on everything which you have. Khair, I don't want to morph into another. Why am I even mentioning this is because we look for rukhsa. Tell me, I want to know the way out for myself. Gunjaish. Like for example, there was one individual, subhanAllah, I mean, if everyone looks for the rationale, the wisdom, what's the hikmah behind it? So there was one brother, and we were kind of encouraging sunnah, and we used to say, brothers, mashallah, there's an inner sunnah, outer sunnah. The inner is where we perfect ourselves from maladies like takabbur and pride, and obviously malice and jealousy and X, Y, and Z. But there's also the outer as well, which some people may refer to as superficial, but it's an integral part of our deen as well. We don't look down upon anybody, but this is something which we have to accept that is a part of our deen. So then he come up with this mad, like sort of this qiyas ma'al fariq, we refer to it as in Arabic, that is absolutely no basis. And he said, you know, I think this, right? He said, first of all, he said, I'm thinking that, you know what, if I have a beard, right, what's going to happen is you know, there's possibility that a couple of nits will get in there, and then you never know, bruv, they might start making, you know, illicit relations on my face, bruv, and then I'm going to start having, and I'm like, where are you going? Where are you going with this way of thinking? Well, can you see where he's going? Bro, you're not mukallaf of that. You do what you have to do. That's it, khalas. Don't start saying X, Y, and Z to come and make your way out. And then he chucked this other one as well. And then he started saying stuff, you know, again, the same sort of lines. Well, there's ikhtilaf, you know, there's some ikhtilaf. Bro, there's going to be ikhtilaf in loads of things until the day of Qiyamah. So for us to always just look for that khair, I know I'm kind of veering off in another direction here, but one point of mentioning is, we want to look for the rationale. We want to look for the wisdom. Can you tell me the hikmah behind it? I may not be able to explain to you what the hikmah is behind even telling your children to start praying at 7. Because I'm basing it upon what Ab sallallahu alayhi wasallam said. But from a psychological point of view, we have something which even the psychologists discuss, that from the age of 0 until 10, right, these are the formative years of a child. You have the infancy stage up till 2, and then you have the early childhood, and then you have the latter part of the childhood. Then you have adolescence that starts from approximately, they say, from age 13 onwards. There's this much consensus there is that the first 10 years of that child's life are formative years. So we are encouraged to tell our children to pray from age of 7. Again, we don't know the real wisdom. I'm saying this is mumkin, it's possible. Based on the tahqiq of the, if you want to call it the Western world or the secular world, that there's the possibility that it's because if the child becomes accustomed from a very, very young age, by the time they become baligh and by the time they eventually reach that age when it is fard upon them, they will happily already comply and they are already accustomed to doing it. So that's one of the hikmahs and the wisdoms behind it. We say that that's possible. It may not be that. It could be something else. We don't know for sure, but we can only base on what we think. But even the Western world will also agree that anything done within the formative years of that child will ultimately have the biggest impact on that child. And that's why for us as Muslims, yeah, don't get me wrong, we don't expect a 5-year-old girl is not fard on her to wear a hijab. But why do we do it? It's so when the child does reach 12, 14, 16, wherever it is, Allah decreed, well 16 is late, but just say 12 or 14, whenever it is that she becomes, eventually goes into and transitions into that period of being recognized as an adult in the light of Islam, then we would say that that child will already be accustomed to following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands. If they are completely alien from these concepts and then we just say, oh, you're baligh now, so now you're going to wear a headscarf. Oh, now you're going to have to start praying salah. Well, we kept them alien for so many years. How do we suddenly expect them to be spontaneous and just jump on the deen? Because there's a chemical change that happens as soon as you become that stage, your whole mind changes. That's why they say the formative years are the most important of a child's life. And now this is the thing. This is why for us we encourage hijab from a young age, fasting from a young age. Yes, we don't become overzealous. This is where we have to draw the fine line. We look at the sihat of the child, we look at the health of the child. We have to take in a lot of factors, the long fast of the day, nutrition and so on. If the child's opening rosé and they're straight away jumping on pakore and samosa, well that's going to be problematic because they're not getting the required nutrients. Pirbi, mashallah, our mashallah other brothers, alhamdulillah, our mashallah, we have some Somali brothers, they have better habits. Mashallah, I was in Jamaat with some brothers from Dhaka, they open their roza with a bit of chawal, a bit of dal soup, all on good. But Pakistanis are notorious. If there's no samosa and pakodi on the musalla, I mean on the dastarkhan, it's like you've done a bid'ah or something. I mean, I invited a family member around my house. I don't want to mention their name because it will come out. And they know I've mentioned it, but I've kept their parda, so they're alright with it. But we called him around for a dinner once, right? And I don't eat, because I'm half English, I just don't eat pakori, I just don't like them. They're too oily, I find them really, really heavy. There's other things I eat, of course, but it's just that in Ramadan especially, it's just not, it's not happening. So what happened was, subhanallah, that we call him around for food and he goes, Yaar, astaghfirullah. He goes, Yaar, koi samosa pakode to rakho yaar. Yaar, samosa kidhar hai yaar, astaghfirullah. And he said, astaghfirullah. So what are you saying astaghfirullah for? Can you see, it's such an integral part of your fast that if you don't see a pakoda or samosa, it's like, bruv, this is abnormal. But it's not at all. It's abnormal eating that stuff. What I'm trying to say is that children, we should look at the day they're fasting, and accordingly, of course, the health of the child does take, is of paramount importance. And this is where we as parents have to use our hikmah and wisdom, maybe introduce it in a slow way. But I'm just giving an example, okay? This is not a green light to say we have to do it like this. I'm saying this is an example. I'm offering some advice here. To accustom the child, I mean, when the child may be young and they see everyone around the house fasting, okay, well, I'll tell you what, maybe just fast until Dhuhr time or something, just a few hours, and then break it, and then come home and resume just before Maghrib, just a couple of hours. Introduce it on a slow way, and then gradually bring it into the child's life. So anyway, that's a whole debate within itself. But we're not we're not irrational people. Alhamdulillah, we look at the sihha of the child, the health of the child. But from an Islamic point of view, we encourage this from a very young age because we believe that has an athar and an effect. And this also is, in the light of psychology, in the light of whatever you want to call it, Freudian psychotherapy or Jungian, whatever you want to say, the whole basis is that in psychodynamic analysis, they say that the formative years of that child has the biggest weight on that child. If you can impress something on that child between those formative years, for the rest of their life, they will always remember that. It will have an athar and an effect. You see? So for us as Muslims, subhanAllah, back to this verse of the Quran, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Why Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala gives, He's also told us to, save our families from fire. Let me ask you, my dear brother, when we see our families disobeying Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, or our children going further away from deen, if there was physical fire involved, for a moment, if there was physical fire involved, what would be the emotion that we would have to stop them from entering that physical fire? If we could physically see fire, what would we not do for the tarbiyah of that child? That's why for us, the fire of this dunya is still very limited. It still cannot give the harm as what is in the akhirah. Akhirah is another level. So that child, subhanallah, if we saw that they were going on a track, okay, let's look at it from another angle now. One is fire. We can see our children are walking towards a fire of this dunya. We would beg them, we would convince them, don't you know you're going to burn? What's wrong with you? You're going to get hurt. And we would grovel, we would cry, we would scream, we would pull the hair out of our head, we would beg and we would beseech, we would go crazy at them. Please, don't you know what you're doing? Okay, keep that in mind, because the fire of this dunya is still very limited in comparison to the fire of the hereafter, and Allah's talking about the fire of the hereafter. But now ask yourself this question. Many of our parents, when they see that their children, for example, are going further and further away from deen, they're moving further and further away from Islam, that we don't really have nothing to say about. But yet when the child comes home and they've, for example, failed in a subject, or for example now they're not meeting the tutor or the teacher's standards, and they're not passing their straight A's, or they're not getting their level 9s, then all of a sudden now, as we say in English, hell breaks loose in the home. Okay, we had big aspirations that you were going to become this big doctor or this engineer or a solicitor, and we were going to retire at 50 or 60, and we were going to have this putter and this son who was going to look after us in our old age, and you've just now thrown water over all of our plans. So we literally go wild when we feel that there's going to be some loss at this child's dunya. So phir bhi dunya is gharz, dunya is maqsad, deen is phir bhi away from the equation. If we were to have the same fikr we do for their dunya, how many times have parents sat their kids down and given them the lecture, what are you going to do when you grow older? Tell me what you're going to become. And when the child says something, how many times we heard this from our students, the parents will ridicule them. Okay, this is a waste man job. You need to be, and it's as if they try and nurture their children to choose higher paying jobs, because everything is built on finance, everything is built on money, everything is built on financial status. So you see what happens? The same issue, unfortunately, if you turn the fikr this way, how you talk to your children in regards to their acquisition of their worldly maqam, if you were to bring that same fikr for deen, then I'm telling you, half of your job is done. But it's so common, and forgive me for being judgmental, it may sound judgmental, but by Allah, I feel very sad when I see this, right? In the streets, you will see, mashallah, an auntie G wearing her salwar kameez or wearing this semi sort of dupatta or hijab on her head. And yet now, Allah save us, but we have the daughter who's walking alongside her. And if you look at her apparel, you would never think that they're son and their mother and daughter. What's going on? Why the difference? You know, subhanallah, one woman comes in a shop, she's with her daughter, and the daughter's wearing chopped, you know, like tops, everything is very revealing and it's very exposing, and then the mother's got like a little dupatta on a bit. So where did you go wrong? You know, what didn't you do? And this is not just one waqia, this is common. When you see parents holding a certain level of deen, and I say a certain level because it questions, are we just cultural Muslims that we're just paying attention to the outer libas? You're wearing salwar kameez, oh mashallah, that's sufficient then, and that's Islam, that's deen. But what about the, you know, that's again a misconception, very wrong thinking. I don't think I'm here to negate it. What we got do it. But don't make this the be all and end all, that is the only way out and then everything else is secondary. Rather, our Islam should be the number one thing, and then obviously the other sort of so-called superficial things would take more of a second place, if you get where I'm coming from. But if their iman is mahfuz, then alhamdulillah. Anyway, moving on, right? The fikr that obviously our parents generally tend to make is more of a career-orientated one. Are you guys hearing this, yeah? So the general fikr which our parents make is more of a career-orientated one. And the discussion of deen is something which is generally very alien. So what one thing which I think is a very big need of our times, or a very, very big fard kifaya which needs to be done for the ummah, is for Muslims to kind of think a bit more long term, because undoubtedly we're not moving back to Sylhet and Dhaka or Islamabad or Karachi anytime soon. Right? If you're born and bred here, the chances are you're going to stay here. For a lot of brothers. Illa mashallah, but the majority will be, because we look at this as home now. But this is what boggles me, right? Is because a lot of our parents have sent, a lot, not all, but a lot of people have put so much money in other countries, but they haven't thought about their life here in the UK. And this is a very big short-sightedness as well. That didn't you think 20, 30, 40 years in the future in UK? And I have a big problem with this, because when you ask youngsters, oh bro, I went back home, innit bro? Back home? What do you mean back home? Where's home? What, Bradford? No bro, in Gujar Khan. Bro, how long have you been here for? Your grandfather came in the 60s, home is still somewhere else. Now forgive me, it seems odd to me. Maybe because I'm half English, call me a Gora, whatever, I don't know. It's up to you. We may differ, it's up to you. You have the right to say what you want. But I just don't get this thinking. Where's home? Where's home? If you're 3 generations, look, I'm not a sellout, I'm not no Uncle Tom. That's also if you're thinking as well. Alhamdulillah, I have a lot of respect for obviously here, and I have a lot of respect for abroad because I study there in madrasa as well. My point of mentioning is that it's that you know, blind to the reality. It just sent big properties abroad. You know, the discussion will be, oh alhamdulillah, you know, we just got another, we just built a wall, we just built this, we just opened up a shop. And then the daughter, one side, she's running away from home. The other side, son's becoming addicted to drugs. You know, one marriage is breaking down. There's people not praying salah. But and alhamdulillah, we built a wall, we built a house, we built a shop. Do you see where I'm coming from? This is what I'm saying. So I think in UK, one of the biggest crises we have is our education. Because from a very young age, what's happening is that our youngsters, they're holding devices, they're holding tablets, iPads, iPods, Samsungs, XY, all these things. And we're giving them these devices. And what happened is, before there was a zamana of TV, where TV would be, and people would frown, in their house, these are the TV wale. It was frowned upon in our society. But if you look at the material that was, it wasn't, I'm not saying it was okay, but it wasn't as bad as what it is now. Because now you get pop-ups, you get all kinds of madness. And what people were exposed to at a latter part of their life because of water shedding, is it called water shedding times? Something like that, isn't it? But you get where I'm coming from, you know what I'm saying? After 7, 8, then they start putting grime on TV. But on an iPad, on your online, the moment you click go, boom, that's it. If your IP address, if you've been watching some mashup stuff, then all of a sudden you're going to be getting some funny pop-ups coming your way. And then you need the iman of a lion to be able to refrain from some of this stuff. Because when you click on some things, instant dopamine rush in your mind, you go crazy. And your heart yearns for such things. Even though they're haram, the heart has an inclination towards things which are haram. So what happens is we find that youngsters, what they're being exposed to now from a very young age, a tender age, they weren't exposed to this stuff to a very later age in the past. And yet TV was something that people would frown upon, but every single person has their own private TV within their hands. Now what do? Do we just lock them off? Do we just take them from their hands and say, no, go back cold turkey? What do we do? Because the problem is, if you create such a void, you know, they say in Urdu, they say, chor apna rasta dhoond leta hai. A person will always find the way out for whatever he or she wants to do. You know, subhanAllah, I'll tell you one thing, and may Allah forgive me. Obviously, when you study in madrasa, mashallah, I was there, became a bit Sufi sometimes as well. So what happened was, obviously, because we're studying everything is fiqh and halal and haram, and sometimes you can become very super ego type, very kind of ego, and not ego as in pride. The super ego, what I mean is that you become very yes, no, black, white, there's no gunjaish in between and so on. So I went around this one Maulana's house, Mufti he was, and he invited me because he knew I was a foreigner. So he goes, look, why don't you come over to my house for Eid? You know, come bring your younger brother and you can spend a few hours with our family. He had a very big family, and mashallah, some of the brothers, you know, all his family, alhamdulillah, all his family, all hafiz of Quran. Alhamdulillah, 5 brothers, all hafiz of Quran, and a couple of sisters. Everyone had done hifz al Quran. But mashallah, and also all of his brothers, someone was a doctor, surgeon, someone was a throat specialist, someone was one engineer, another, alhamdulillah, all educated brothers as well. But when it came to him, he goes, I want to study Islam. So they said, alhamdulillah, if that's what you genuinely want to do it. And he didn't just become an average Maulana, but he became a very senior Mufti. Why I'm being careful is because I don't want to mention names, because naturally it's his private business. But anyway, I go around his house now, and very affluent family, all youngsters are there. So he said to me, he goes, bete main aapke liye game lagaun, game. Like he's putting a game on the computer, and I'm thinking, game? Astaghfirullah, game? Maulvi sahab, tasbih padho, Quran padho. You know, that's what I'm thinking, sort of thing. If I be honest with you, Allah maaf farmaye, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, Maulvi sahab and game? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, what's going on here? And then he looked at me, and because he must have clocked that this guy is looking a bit funny. I wasn't being judgmental, but I was thinking, but hold on a second, this is a Mufti of Darul Ifta, very senior, but he's very in tune with what's going on in his zamana. He looked at me, he goes, मौलवी साहब क्या कर सकते हैं, थोड़ी बहुत जो ना मकरूहात के दर्जे की चीज़ें करनी पड़ती है हराम से बचाने के लिए. I'll explain, don't worry, for those of you guys that don't understand Urdu. In Pakistan, what it is that, you know, these sort of game cafes, they're not nice places to be, unfortunately. They invite a lot of shar and evil, sadly. Let's not go into what happens there, but believe me when I say that it's very harmful for your iman, by Allah, to be in these environments for too long. You can only regulate yourself to a certain degree. The effect, and it has its own athar. It's like saying, I just went into a pub to get a Coke. I mean, look, even if you went in to get a Coke, you're still going to get affected from the mahol. It's the same thing. Okay? So he said to me, "Ab kya kar sakte? Kuch makruhat ki darje ki cheezein karni padti." We have to do some makruhat things, but to save them from the bigger haram. Because all they were playing was just a racing game. It wasn't like they were nowadays like going around now shooting people, Fortnite, you know, Battle Royale and patani kya, until 12 o'clock at night playing computer games. It wasn't like that. 1 or 2 hours bus. But you see where my mind was going. Okay, this is Mufti Sahib, you know, that sort of thing. But I understand now the hikmah and the wisdom where he came from. So I'm saying as well, similarly, is that our deen is, we're not so, you know, backward thinking and so on. And this is not a please, na'uzubillah, this is not a green light for us to think there's gunjaish for everything. I'm not saying that either. Because there are some things that are clearly impermissible that we don't go near. But if there are some things that are questionable, I'm talking about that. But I'm saying about TV now, that's where I led off from. We're giving them tablets, they're not doing questionable things. A lot of time we find that they're doing impermissible things. So it's not even a case of a game or two. TV, Pirbi, in the past, there was some level of moderation going on. Nowadays it's not. You got a tablet, you can watch what you want. The world is your oyster, you choose what you want. Now what happens is that if we have not built conscious, moral foundations within those children, it's not difficult for them to veer to the left and right. That's my point of mentioning. My whole point of mentioning this was what? If we haven't made the tarbiyah of those children, and don't think tarbiyah comes at the age of 20, it comes from 0 to 10. Okay, it starts from this age. If we have missed those years within those children's lives, then believe me, the tarbiyah afterwards becomes a hell of a lot more difficult. Because what was formed between those formative years is what is going to stick with them for the rest of their lives. And this is where we go wrong. Because a lot of people, what they do is, in acquisition for wealth, for worldly riches, for jobs. And I gave you the example of the house, building a house and so on. One side you're saying, oh, we've got all these properties, but then you're losing your children the other side. So this is a big qusur on behalf of the parents, a big fault. And forgive me if this comes across rude, but I say a lot of parents are living in some cuckoo land. As we say in English, they've got their head stuck in the ground. But we can't be like ostriches. We look at the condition of our youth. Subhanallah, look at our youngsters. But I'll ask you this much, and be judge and jury for yourself, and this will be the litmus test within your own homes. Do you have to encourage your children to fast, to pray, to do anything Islamic, or do they automatically do it and they tell you to do it? You ask yourself. Maybe, mashallah, your kids are praying tahajjud. I don't know what it's like in East London, but down where we are, it's not like that at all, unfortunately. Very sadly, a lot of youngsters are into drugs. We don't, subhanAllah, there's no concept of hijab in our area, because we are generally a minority in comparison to like how you have here. There's a sizable majority, not majority Muslim, but a very notable population of Muslims. Where we only maybe about, they say, 8% in the whole city, whole town. We're very minimal, and that is including children, adults, women, children, the lot. So we don't have we have a lot more challenges on our hands as well in that sense. My point of mentioning is that if you look at our current predicament which we are in, we're very far from the ideal. Now, as I said, these are going to be the youngsters that are going to be tomorrow's future generation, but what have we instilled within them? Okay, you leave a few properties, but then what's that going to help them if they have not got the foundation of deen within their lives? So I said that what I think is really important for this zamana, and I'm hoping inshallah some people will listen to this. I have this vision that I think we need to capitalize on our children, our education of our children, from the time they go nursery until A-levels. See, what I would like to see, and some people, this is how some jahil, some people are, they don't let their secrets out because they say, we want to be the ones to capitalize. But listen, I'm going to share this with you because I want someone to capitalize. Bhai, kitni stupid soch hai कि we don't want to, I want to be the pioneer of this. No. I'm going to tell you this. This is what what I feel we need to do. I think we need to educate our children from nursery until A-level in simultaneous education with deen and dunya. This is my opinion. You have the right to differ, no problem at all. I'm not saying what this came as this is what, from my analysis, my understanding. From a young age, if we can have simultaneous education, Iqra model school in Pakistan did exactly the same thing. When the children reach Panchwi class, which is approximately, the child is about 10, they start their Hifdh al-Quran. By the time they reach Atwi class, which is about roughly year 9, they finish their Hifdh al-Quran. They give about 4 years approximately to do it. A child is learning Hifdh al-Quran, they're becoming a Hafidh or a Hafidha. Alongside that, they're doing their national curriculum. Because if you look at what you need to pass GCSEs, if you look at how much really content needs to be passed, it's not that demanding. Because if you look at countries like Finland, who have a better education than us at the moment, who have the leading education in the world, how are they producing the results? Because all the way up until the age of 16, there's no class tests. They don't have any. Zero testing except for the main sort of GCSEs or the end of your schooling year tests. Zero tests, zero homework. Subhanallah, imagine that. Why are they producing the best results? Those last years are the most important, just the last one or 2 years, in order to capitalize. If you can do that, then mashallah, then the child, because when they come, what are they teaching them really? Because we've seen, we interact with our children. If you spend some time and you look, what do? It's not a great deal. They can learn this very, very quickly. But you see, it's about bonding with the child and connecting with them. It's basically they're impressing upon that child's subconscious and unconscious. And then many ideas get formed in the child's mind, but when we're not putting anything dini in that, then it's difficult. We see, why has the child gone on the wrong track? And why is it they've gone off in the wrong direction? It's because there was a gap that was needing to be filled and you didn't fill it. Someone else filled it for you. So I'm not saying people are doing it in a sinister way. I'm just saying that's what they think is the best, so they're going to do it. But we have a right to educate our children, and I advocate, and I think that if we were to have it simultaneously, side by side, from nursery all the way up to A-levels, we could teach them the Quran, we can teach them Arabic. If you even were to teach them the beginning, basic, bunyadi classes of alim class even, I think every single Muslim should learn how to speak and understand Arabic to a relative degree, at least so they can understand Qala Allah and Qala Rasul, meaning what Allah is saying and what the Prophet ﷺ said in Hadith. We should know about our glorious history of the past. When you forget your history, you don't know who you are. We should know about the seerah. We should know how strong base knowledge on Aqidah. Subhanallah. Aqidah is, we are in a crisis at this moment in time. Because it seems we've got a lot of Muslims, but in us, khatra and dangers are building up, where people are not even associating with Islam. But because it's a big taboo within our communities, we don't talk about this. And they're afraid to even approach anyone because they'll feel stigmatized. They might feel like they're going to be the black sheep of the family. There's an issue of inheritance. There's 101 things which stops them from coming out of their shell. But yet people vent it online, and that's why statistics boast that there's 10,000 people who have turned away from Islam just within London. 10,000. That's not a joke. That's some serious statistics we have there. Again, obviously we can debate where did it come from, because some people are going to say, well, show me those stats and so on. Well, I don't even want to mention the source. You know why? Because you may go, some people then just go and check, and they've got a frequent ask question thing and a whole load of articles, and without having the strong base of Islam, and you go and study that stuff, well, then you're basically throwing yourself in the lions then. So I said that if we could educate our children from nursery all the way up to A-level simultaneously with deen as well, so we kind of influence them in Aqidah, history, Arabic, all these things, the Quran. By the time they get to 19, then you give them the choice. They've basically studied the first bunyadi classes and the basis of the alim class. Now you've got a choice. You can either go to study another 3 years and you can complete and become an alim, do the alimiyah, and then because you've got this knowledge as well, and you've got that, I feel you'd be at a more of an advantage in today's society. Something controversial I'm saying, but I'm going to say it openly. Because if you look in the past, subhanallah, our madaris served a specific need for a specific time. I'm not saying they're obsolete and they're not of any benefit. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, alhamdulillah, they are fantastic, but there are also these additional things that if we were to do, I say this is another added benefit. I'm not, let them stay as they are. Let them have that, no problem. But I do believe that for me, I think this is the way forward. To have this in addition to what we have. From nursery onwards until the age of A-levels. Then once that child reaches that age, then you can say, what do you want to do? If the child says, now I want to go and study, I want to become a doctor, fine. Now all you need to study is 3 or 4 more years, you get your MBBS. I want to become an accountant, fine. You go and do a BA in this subject. I want to become a lawyer, fine. You go and do an LLB. I want to become a Maulana, fine. Okay, then go and study an alim class. You only need another 3 years and you'll become a Maulana. Can you see where I'm going with this? But where these two tabaqas, where these groups of people have been going side by side, when they reach 19, now it's just a choice of specialization. You are either specializing in Islam or you're specializing in dunya. What we're having now is, because there is this massive gap between the two groups, we have, in Pakistan they call it Mr. and Mullah. So you have this way of thinking and you have that way of thinking. Ulama are saying they're kafir, they're saying they're kafir. They're saying they're jahil, they're gumrah, maulvi log, inko kuch samajh nahi aati hai. However, if they were to go side by side, and then it's just a specialization, Maulana here, maybe he's a specialist in something else. I'm a specialist in something else. Maulana is something else. Shaykh Abdul Hasan something else. But what we say is that we all have studied. I don't like to call myself an alim, but in reality, people call us ulama, right? So as ulama, we've studied something, but he has his specialization, he has his, but we're looking at ourselves as one fraternity. Just with with a different specialization. The same way, if these two groups were to go side by side and then it get to the age of after A-levels, oh mashallah, my brother went to study alim class, but I went to study accountancy. Oh, when you mean brother, my Muslim brother, oh, my Muslim brother went to study, become a Mufti, I went to go and do a master's degree. Can you see where this is going? They will look at each other as their own. It won't be they're looking at them as jahil, they're looking at them as jahil, they're saying they're backwards, they're saying they're backwards. Get with the times, no, you get with the times. They're one group of people, but they have their specializations. Because when both groups are so alien from another, then they're going to be weary of them, they're going to be weary of them. So the way to close that gap is to do both things side by side. Because I advocate also, if you look in the past historically, Muslims were the forefront of science, mathematics, algebra, chemistry, botany, all these things, subhanallah. So I'm advocating this. So don't think, because he's got the title of a shaykh or a maulana or mufti or flana and so on, that we're going to advocate, leave your courses, leave your studies, become maulanas, become so. Study the knowledge, yeah, but not everyone needs to become an imam of a masjid. Yes, do the knowledge. I'm not saying nothing wrong with that. Become a maulana as well. However, there is so many other things which you can also benefit the ummah by. So anyway, obviously I'm looking to kind of tie up the loose ends, inshallah. You see, the Prophet ﷺ, he would capitalize on every opportunity and to educate the youngsters, and especially the young, the very, very young. He there's one Sahabi radiyallahu anhu, he mentions, Kuntu ghulaman fi hijri Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I was a young boy in the lap of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, meaning I was in his protection, meaning in his company at a very, very young age. And he mentions his hand was moving around in a dish. They were sharing a plate of food and his hand was wandering around. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, now technically speaking, there's no haram act which is going on here, technically speaking. But to teach that child adab and manners, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ya ghulam, sammillah wa kul mimma yalik. Say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or Bismillah karo, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and eat that which is near you. Eat that food which is near you. But he said it in such a beautiful way that this became his habit thereafter, and it became part of his, as you would call it, his conscious. Then it became part of his actions. I think it's Abdullah bin, someone correct me, Abdullah bin Abbas Ghaliban radiyallahu anhu, he mentions, Kuntu khalfa an-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, I was on a conveyance with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he instructed me some words, and he mentioned, Ya ghulam, ihfadillaha ihfadillaha tajidhu tujahak. He mentioned, oh young boy, now they're on a conveyance, they're traveling together, just a few moments, let me give some advice. He mentioned, if you uphold the deen of Allah, ihfadillaha ihfadillaha tajidhu tujahak. If you protect and uphold the deen of Allah, the rights of Allah, the huquq of Allah, meaning deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you, and you will also find Him in front of you, in assisting you in all of your affairs. And then he goes on to mention something else. He mentions, وَإِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ وَإِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ. If you ever want to seek assistance and help from anyone, i'ana, isti'ana, if you ever want, you are seeking help from anyone, seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want something, you ask something, you want making su'al, ask Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. Now look, he capitalized on this opportunity. I say when you're dropping your children to school, dropping them back from school, picking them to madrasa, taking them to madrasa, wherever we are, Allah maaf farmaye, turn off the talk sport and this patani radios and the same nonsense we hear, and capitalize on that moment. This is the time to connect with the children. Where I'm coming from, because the words that parent says will imprint on that child as something which was important. Because my father told me this, or my mother told me this. They remember that to the end of their days, because when a child is young, their father for them is the most perfect individual there is. There's no one better than him. And then same for the child, for the mother. The mother, they're their primary caregivers. So for them, you can't fault them in any way, shape or form. So if these things come from the parents, Allah maaf farmaye, we see some, you think, yaar khuda ka khauf karo, yaar, turn off the garbage Bollywood and give some time to the kids. Can you cultural? But put culture to the side. They need Islam, they need deen. Or Nasibo Lal is not taking them to Jannah. No other actress or anyone is taking them to Jannah. Bhai, what's going to take them to Jannah is Qala Allah and Qala Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It's opportunities like this, capitalizing, sitting down, teaching them adab, teaching them manners. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just to mention, he also said that each and every one of us, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. It's not a question of if or agar, magar, should I, shouldn't I, maybe, perhaps. All of you are responsible for your subordinates. كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ. All of you are shepherds for your flocks. And each one of you will be questioned about this. Each one of you is responsible for his flock, meaning you are responsible for your subordinates. If you have only 4 or 5 children, or 2 or 3 children, even one child, you'd be questioned about to the extent of your responsibility. Someone with more, his responsibility, her responsibility. And it's not a one-sided job where we leave it just to the sisters. It's got to go hand in hand, brothers as well. It's a joint enterprise here for the sake of these children. Subhanallah. So just obviously coming to an end, I want to mention one thing quickly. A very touching, mashallah, story, subhanallah. There was one particular mother, she made her son Hafid. His name was Hassan bin Salih, Ali ibn Salih. 2 brothers. This will inshallah be a benefit to us all. We're coming to an end. So what happened is that their father passed away when they were very young. So what happened is that she had this desire that whatever happens, I want my family to remain firm on deen. So what she did is that she made her eldest son Hafid of Quran. And then when the younger one, mashallah, after that, he also became Hafid of Quran as well. So then the mother sat down with the children and said, look, Allah Ta'ala has given you this wealth of knowledge and the knowledge of Quran. To thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what should we do? So there were obviously different opinions, we should do this and so on, but they all decided one thing. They decided, okay, what we should do, we should divide the night into 3 parts. Divide the night into 3 parts. And what will happen is the mother will stand up and she will read 10 juz of Quran in tahajjud. And then she will wake up her other son Hassan bin Saleh and he will read 10. And then he will go to wake up his brother, he will pray 10. And then subhanAllah, they would rotate. So every single person, every 3 days, they would be doing 1 khatam al-Quran in their homes. On a daily basis, they were doing 1 khatam al-Quran. But individually, it would be after every 3 days, they do 1 khatam themselves. They mentioned, we did this for years. No day was qada in our home where we would not do this amal in our home. Years passed. Now check this one out. Mother passed away. The family homes very near. And they still had this ma'amul. You know, mashallah, we are simple people, yeah. They used to just extend the house and people used to still be living. People, 1 room here, my chacha lives here, auntie lives here, but there's a central place. Simple people. Now, well, we've got these big buildings, but our hearts have become so disconnected. Subhanallah. But these were people, simple living, all families would be sharing, and the house, the dera was the same. So they still used to have this ma'amul of reading this tahajjud. But check this out, on the night where the mother passes away, it's her funeral. Then what happens? Both brothers, they come back home and they make mashwara. And they say, yeah, there was a time where mum used to read with us. I used to wake up, you used to wake up, she used to wake up. We would do khatm al-Quran every single night within our home. Now she's gone, what do we do? So both brothers made mashwara. They said, let's not deprive ourselves of this ajr. You do 15, I will do 15. So this is what both brothers did. Because when they were young, they became hafid. The mother made tarbiyah. You have to do this. And it was a mutual decision. And then I don't know which brother passed away first, but this carried on for years until one of the brothers passed away. And then on his janazah, when his brother passes away, there's only 2 of them. And then he was by himself and he said, Yar, what would you do and I do in that situation? We said, Yar, chalo kal se inshallah, from tomorrow. Procrastinate. No, from tomorrow inshallah. From Monday. Or fast are very short. Inshallah from next week. Inshallah from this time. Everything gets pushed away to the side. He then said, he sat down by himself, bichara, he was parishan. He said, what do I do now? No one is there. He said, Koi baat nahi, I will do the ma'amul by myself. He mentions until the day he breathed his last, he did 1 khatam al-Quran every day in his life until he breathed his last. Tarbiyat to isi ko kehte hain na. People didn't become big for nothing. Sufyan Thawri rahmatullah alayhi, I'll finish on this incident. You know, he had this desire, this talab that he wanted to study deen. So his mother, subhanAllah, he was at a very tender age. He exhausted every avenue locally to the extent where everyone he learned, anyone who there was a muhaddith, he would attend the durus of. But then there come a time where he wanted to go on further to study. So he said to his mother, the father had ghaliban passed away. He said, mother, please, if you allow me, I want to go and study the ilm of deen further. So she said, okay, alhamdulillah, I've made you waqf for the deen, go. And inshallah, you go and study Islam, go and study the deen. Nevertheless, he started his pursuit of education outside his local area and studied for a long period of time. He wasn't 19 when he left. He studied for approximately, and it was approximately a period of 19 years. If Allah forgive me any kami beshi. He studied for approximately a period, as I say, roughly about 19 years. Then he comes back home. He knocks on the door. Now just imagine this for a second. You haven't seen your son for nearly 19 years. When you don't see your family for 3 days, you go in Jamaat, they say you didn't even send us a text message. You go just for a couple of days, you up north of a conference with some ulama, something, i'tikaf, but you didn't phone us, you didn't text us. This was 19 years. This is a long period of time. So anyway, what happened is that he comes and knocks, and obviously the house is still the same. Amma, it's your son Sufyan. And she said, beta, I'm not even going to open the door. I made you waqf for the sake of Allah. Tomorrow we will meet on Qiyamah. But the mothers in the past produced the likes of people like this. So they call this is an a'la tareen example. Kam se kam, this much we can produce. This we're not going to be able to produce the Hassan Basris of our zamana and Sufyan Thawris and so on. But this much we can do, that we can keep the flame of iman alight in our homes. We can keep the buzz of deen alive. Ta'aleem in our homes, Quran in our homes, dhikrullah alive in our homes, salah alive in our homes. This should be the number one fikr and priority. And of course, as I mentioned, the formative years of that child's life are the main effort which we need to put in for those children. Because if we neglect this period of life, then believe me, we will smile today, but we will cry tomorrow. If we just have a bit of qana'at and a bit of kind of simplicity, believe me, this will go a very, very long way. So we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us tawfiq and the ability, inspires us from the likes of what we have mentioned, the good which we've said, Allah give us tawfiq to practice, and anything perhaps which was a bit out of my forte, or something perhaps which Gummy Bishi and I was supposed to mention, if there's anything which, any shar, then may Allah ta'ala save us from that. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire us and give us the ability to kind of make fikr and worry and concern for our future generations living here in UK. It's a very, very big issue, and we need to really open up our eyes to reality that our children are part of society now. We take out of our mind, they're going to go back to living in a foreign country, somewhere else. Home, this is home now, for us, for them. So alhamdulillah, for us, we need to think long term in the future. That how can our children be a benefit to society, benefit to their deen, benefit to their families, benefit, overall benefit. Because khairun nas may yanfa'un nas. This is what Islam taught us. The most beneficial of people is one who is the best of people is one who is beneficial to others. So make dua Allah Ta'ala give us this ability, inshallah. Time is exceeded. I said I was going to take about 45 minutes. It's been near enough of an hour. Not an hour, it's gone over an hour. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to make amal and practice. And just as how we've gathered here today, may Allah gather us like this in Jannah al-Firdaus, inshallah. Wa akhir dawana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Jazakumullah khairan.